Welcome to T2T Network, and this is New York Giants Corner, baby. Everybody, welcome to another episode of New York Giants Corner, and we're heading into Week 1 against Dallas. The 2023 campaign is about to begin, and I have a returning special guest who was on very early this year, I think around playoff time, and he is Chicago Giants fan, otherwise known as CGF. He's been around for a while, great content creator, and why don't you take it away? Let's tell everyone what's going on with yourself.
Hey, it's good to be back on again. This is CGF_NFL, also known as the content creator for the channel CGF_sports. Last season I was doing the Giants Nation podcast. I decided to move away from that just because I've noticed that a lot of people have done that before. Even Bobby Skinner did it at one point. So I was like, I need to be a little more original. So I looked at different names, but I feel like everyone is taking the Giants names that are available. So it's like, I'm just going to do CGF. That's what people know me as. And, CGF Sports, that's something that covers pretty much everything. So that's where I am. So thank you for having me on.
No, thanks for joining me again, man. I really appreciate it. I loved our conversation last time. And as I was saying in the first time we collaborated, much earlier this year, I was like, I knew you and I would hit it off anyway, because I'd remembered you from some talking boards, back in the past on, I guess, probably Giants.com, or was it
Big Blue View? Yeah.
Big Blue View, which I still check out quite a bit. And, but I remember your comments always got me. It was like, your comments were always like, all right, these are the go-to comments. And these ones drove conversation too. And I'm like, and I first started coming across you, I guess, in Twitter well over a year ago, and YouTube, and I'm like, wow, I wonder if this is the same guy. When I reached out to you, you were like, yeah, I used to also be, comment a lot, and Big Blue View. I'm like, that is you. Okay, so great stuff, man. And yeah, so CGF is just rebranded. Well, it's still CGF, and I love the name. Keep the name. And there is, a lot of Giants names are taken out. Like I said, New York Giants Corner was originally supposed to be just like a working title for the, temporarily. And I'm like, I'll shorten it one day. And I just can't think of anything else. Like Big Blue. It's all gone. I'm like, keep it New York Giants Corner. But yes, definitely keep CGF, Chicago Giants fan. I love it. That's how we all know you. And that's how everyone's going to get to continue to know you as well. So glad you're here, man. And, obviously CGF is a huge Giants fan. We're both talking a little bit, behind the scenes here before we started recording, and we've gone back and forth on Twitter a lot. I get the impression we're both very excited about this upcoming season. We have a lot of positive vibes, and it's okay if there's like any concerns, and I want everyone to always like state their own opinion and everything. But let's lead off with, I feel really good about this season. And it's not just like it used to be for the past years. Like, I feel good, like, hey, we got some good young guys. I want to see us just progress, take some baby steps. I want to see the key players develop. Now I feel like we're beyond that. We had a year last year where, most people weren't expecting much. The team went 9-7-1 and made the playoffs. We had a playoff victory. And, I feel like we're in such a different situation now than last year. But heading into Week 1, how do you feel about the Giants entering this season as opposed to last year? And do you feel like last year was a fluke, like some argue? Do you feel the Giants can compete with the teams they're playing this year on this difficult schedule? answer that, take that any which way you want. I'm just throwing that 3-part question out there, but however you want to, like, how do you feel about this year compared to last year entering game one?
I feel good actually. Last year, prior to the season, I felt pretty confident that Daniel Jones was going to play well. I
Yeah.
I've always felt good about Daniel Jones. I know I
And
was in the minority on that. I mean, I was one of the guys on the Big Blue Review message board prior to 2019, prior to Nashville. I was pounding the table saying, Gettleman, draft this guy. And to this point, he's been everything I expected him to be. Going into the season, I kind of liken it to last year, but a little bit different because there is a little more pressure on the Giants. Obviously, 9-7-1 last year. No one expected that. If you remember, if we go back, all the content creators, all the beat writers, all the national voices, they were all saying the Giants going to win 6 to 7 games, and some even worse. And now, lo and behold, I'm looking again, and it's the same stuff. It's 4 or 5 wins, 6-11, and sometimes I just wonder, do people watch the games? Do they watch the players? And as you said, the Giants roster is very different than what it was last year. I know you retweeted a Bobby Skinner tweet, but it was a perfect encapsulation of how different the roster is. Last year, they had David Sills starting. We didn't have Aziz and Thibodeau starting week 1. So going into this season, I feel really good. Now, the schedule makers obviously didn't do the Giants any favors. You look at the first 6 games, it is rough. I mean, you have Dallas.
It's crazy.
It's you got Dallas. Maybe you get a break with Arizona. Then you go right to San Francisco on Thursday night. Come home, play Pete Carroll in Seattle, and then you got the 2 AFC East teams. You got Miami and Buffalo. So first 6 games are going to be challenging, but last year was challenging. Giants had to open up against the prior season's number 1 seed in the AFC in Tennessee. So they're not going to.
Yeah.
The Giants are not going to have any. They're not going to have any favors. But with this team, I've been around long enough. I've been around following the Giants since the early 90s. I do remember the 80s, but I was very young. It's a very similar feel. When the Giants are good, you kind of get that feel. I can't explain it. It's everything just feels right. Like in 07 and 11, it was the same way. It's just that cohesiveness that everyone's thinking about other teams. Everyone thinks, oh, the Jets. Everything is about the Jets right now. And I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit. But right now, looking at the Giants, I think the Giants are in a good position. And I'm excited to see what happens next Sunday night.
Me too, man. Me too. And I'm with you, man. Like when you've been around for a while and you follow a team for a long time, you get a feel for them, don't you? You get a feel for like what's working, what's going to work, what's not working, what's not going to work. You kind of get a feel for that. And I admit, like maybe I felt that way, like entering Joe Judge's second year. I'm like, oh, this team is, they only had like 5 wins the year before, or 6 wins. 6 wins, I think, Joe Judge's first year. But I'm like, you know what? This is not a team that's overly talented, and the best talent they have is super young, and they've got a lot of room to go. So, but I knew, like, when that first game of Joe Judge's second year, it was against Denver, and it was just such a mess. I'm like, this is bad. Like this is bad. Like you can't start off with this way, like with the same issues that you've had like for the past like 3 years. And I don't feel like I feel like this team is in such competent hands now with all these coaches returning. Obviously, Dable, the head coach. You've got Wink Martindale, who returned, who even more importantly, in my opinion, Kafka returned. And to me, that was more. If someone wants to say Wink, I totally get it. I absolutely. It's for me, it's like 51%, 49%. But I thought Kafka, especially with Daniel Jones, I guess it would be the same offense anyway, but I love that it's the same play caller. It's the same 2 years in a row of Kafka and Jones working together, not just Dable, but Kafka and Jones is key. The guy needs stability. And I agree with you. I'm big on Daniel Jones. I wasn't there with you when you were, pounding the table for him, prior to the draft in 2019. I wasn't. I'm like, I'll wait another year for a quarterback. But, Wentz, but very quickly when I was hearing great things about him, in that preseason 2019, and then he did very, very well in the preseason. And that game 1 against Tampa Bay, to quote Dave Gettleman, I was in full bloom love. And after that Tampa Bay game 1 for Daniel Jones, it was game 3 that year, but his first professional game as a starter, and I was in full bloom love. And ever since then, like I pound the table for that dude. I am in the bunker, the Daniel Jones bunker, like within Fort Daniel Jones, atop Daniel Jones Mountain, and I am there with you and quite a few others. Where I absolutely love this guy. Like everything I'd want to see from a quarterback, he has shown. He has shown throughout his entire tenure, and I could see, that he wasn't the issue. There were always things he needed to clean up. The fumbles, obviously, rookie year, first 2 years, that's obvious. Pocket presence, which was incredibly better last year. But and some other things too. But he's always improved everything, and he's such a professional. And I could see that the issues weren't really him. It was everything else that was around him, whether it was coaching, offensive line, weapons who aren't that great to begin with, and then they're injured, stuff like that. But I mean, what a difference this season. Like, I feel so confident, and I'm not necessarily like, confident, like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to get like 11 wins and we're going to get 2 playoff wins this year. And that I'm not sure of. I just feel like I feel super confident that this is going to be a good team. And this is going to be a team that is not going to be pushed around by anyone. Maybe they'll get their teeth kicked in one game by say like Philadelphia or San Francisco is going to be a headache for them. That's always a tough team to handle. But this is going to be they're not going to be an easy out for anyone. And you mentioned the schedule before. Like, listen, some years schedules are harder than others. We're playing a tough division, and they're playing a very tough division with the AFC East. But I mean, you look at the schedule in terms of like where they got to go. They're going to like out in the West Coast, like 3 weeks in a row or something. It's like there's crazy stuff like that. It's just like, dude, you might as well just stay out in the West Coast for like 3 weeks. Don't even bother coming back. But yeah, I'm super excited about the team. I feel like this team has had such a huge difference in talent that's been added this year. I'm going to bring up the Bobby Skinner tweet because I want to go send CGF the link before, and I happened to see Bobby Skinner's tweet, and like I knew this is a significantly better team as opposed to entering last year, but seeing the names on paper, if you will, or in a tweet, really brought it home for me. And I'm gonna bring it up, but yeah, what do you think about CGF when people say like last year was a fluke? And kind of make it sound like, oh, we're going to see the real Giants this year. What are your thoughts? As I bring this up?
I just think sometimes human beings in general have inherent biases. And I just think from day one, when he walked across the stage in Nashville, there's just certain people who just felt he wasn't going to be a good NFL quarterback. And you look at what the Giants had last year, you look at the amount of injuries they had and what they did, 9-7-1, going to a place that is very hard to play, US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, and winning a road playoff game. And I've heard people make excuses about that game. Oh, it was just Minnesota had such a bad defense. Daniel Jones a couple of weeks before almost beat them if it wasn't for some miraculous field goal. And I just think right now, looking at last season, the Giants did that much. Daniel Jones did that much with that roster. And you're showing the tweet right now by Bobby Skinner. You look at that, you look at the roster and how much it's improved. Even this past offseason, you get Darren Waller. If he could stay on the field, he's a top 3, top 2 tight end. You look at the NFC East. You look at the teams where the weaknesses are. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. At least in my opinion, their weaknesses can be exploited by Waller. So that was a very strategic move on the Giants' part to get him. If he could stay healthy, and then you add a guy like Jalen Hyatt who has looked great, and then you got Paris Campbell, and you have the Hodgins coming back, you have Shepard coming back. The Giants are loaded with weapons, and that's not even talking about a Saquon Barkley who is super pissed off right now because he didn't get a long-term long-term extension. So I think it's easy for people to get into a groupthink and say, "Oh, the Giants were a fluke." And I'll tell you right now, I think the Giants are going to do really well this year, and I'm not going to give away. For those who are watching this, check out my preview episode. I think it's going to be on Wednesday night, 9 p.m. I go over the NFC East and I give my prediction on the Giants, how I think they're going to do this year. But I think the Giants are going to surprise some people. I think Daniel Jones is going to take the next step this season. I think as long as everyone can stay healthy at this point, everyone has stayed healthy. I think they're going to even surprise more people. So I'm excited about this maturation process for Daniel Jones. And now, but to be realistic, to be honest, he has his money. He got his contract extension. Now he has to perform on that level. So I'm excited to see what happens. I don't know about you, but it's going to be really interesting.
I fully believe in Daniel Jones. I really do. And like I've told like some other people, some other fans, I'm like, Daniel Jones isn't the worry. Don't be he's not the concern. Be concerned about like staying healthy. Maybe the offensive line, like, especially the right side of the offensive line, like we really need Evan Neal to take a big step forward this year. I'm not saying he's got to be Andrew Thomas this year, but he needs to take a big step forward. Like if he's not holding down the right side of the line, I still think the offense is going to be improved, but it's going to be harder. Like, I know they want to take shots downfield this year. That's what the speed is about. It's not just about getting faster guys, within like, a 10-yard throw. It's not like that. They want to stretch this field out too. They do want to take deep shots. And I want people to see that Daniel Jones throws a beautiful deep ball. A lot of people are like, oh, he can't throw deep. I'm like, yeah, he does. He throws deep and he throws very, very well. He's not going to throw with a flick of the wrist like Mahomes or Josh Allen, and a handful of others. But his arm is absolutely strong enough, and he's got really nice touch on his deep passes. And they're going to see that. They're going to need some time. And the offensive line, that is still a concern of mine, is the offensive line. But I tell people, I'm like, health and the offensive line, be concerned about that. I'm like, I just tell people, like, I'm just telling you that you don't really have to worry about Daniel Jones. Like, he's gotten better every single year. I know he wants to pass the ball. I remember, man, rookie year under Pat Shurmur. I know Pat Shurmur wanted him to throw the ball. Daniel was loving it. Daniel threw like he was on pace for 32 passing touchdowns his rookie year for a reason, with a starting, receiving core, if you will, including Ingram of, Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, and Evan Ingram. And those aren't bad names, but these aren't like, we're not talking like Pro Bowlers here either. And those guys, I counted it out, like a year ago, like they averaged 9 starts each. That's how injured these guys were. He was thrown to Benny Fowler half the time his rookie year, and Caden Smith, who I still like to this day. I still wish we hadn't moved on from at the time. I think he'd make a good third string tight end. But these are the guys like, and Saquon was injured like a good third of the year at least, playing with a high ankle sprain. Like, dude, rookie year on a team that was being completely rebuilt, and he threw 24 passing touchdowns in 12 games. He was on pace for 32 in a rookie year. This was an Eli Manning parachuted into the 2004 Giants with Toomer and Barber, and well, they had Barkley, but with Toomer, Barber, and Shockey, and a pretty good defense even at that time. This wasn't anything like that. This is a team that was ground zero rebuild. Was 2019, and Daniel Jones was like ground zero of the rebuild. So I have no doubt this guy wants to pass the ball. And once you saw the receivers, once you had, and again, not household names, but good, serviceable NFL receivers. Isaiah Hodgins popped up on the scene. We were fortunate to get him. Darius Slayton and Richie James. Those guys just being healthy and on the field every single week the second half of the season. And Saquon had kind of gotten like worn down by the middle of the season because they had used him a lot. The passing game looked pretty damn well considering the limitations that they had to work with. And they opened up they opened it up more with Daniel Jones, and lo and behold, you go to the playoffs and he looks phenomenal. And yeah, people can crap all over Minnesota right now, but the goalpost for Daniel Jones, and I'll say this New York Giants team, is always, and I'm not someone who's like, oh, the media always picks on the Giants, but I kind of feel like that I'm getting like to that point. And I certainly feel like the crap they've thrown, the shade they've thrown to Daniel Jones is like, out of control. Like, some of the stupid stuff they said, when he signed his contract was just out of control. I won't even go there. But point being that, I do feel like the goalposts are constantly moved for this team at this point. And they want to say like, oh, last year was a fluke. Like, it was an easier schedule. Let me tell you something. The games that we probably, some of our better wins last year in the regular season, Tennessee, like you said, which we didn't even have our edge rushers. We didn't even have our edge rushers. I realized they didn't have A.G. Brown, but that's a team that's been in the playoffs, a bunch bunch of times that's well coached. And they still have, like, you're supposed to have a solid defense, and you have Henry, and they still have their starting quarterback at that time. Tennessee wound up being like 6-3 at some point before Tannehill went down. We don't win that game in years past. People can say we got lucky. We don't get lucky like that in years past. We beat Green Bay. I realize Green Bay, I don't think their head coach is honestly all that good, but they didn't have Devontae Adams anymore. They also refused to run the ball like they used to with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Whatever he's thinking, that's on the coaching staff. And the defense, their defense didn't live up to billing. I get it. I still think Aaron Rodgers is a very good quarterback. But I'll tell you right now, the New York Giants over the past like 5-6 years they do not beat that Green Bay Packer team. There is no luck there. They find a way to lose that game, even if they should have won it, but they won it. And say the Baltimore Ravens, I realized that Lamar Jackson didn't have like any running backs playing at that time. Offensive line, I believe, was banged up, and he certainly didn't have any wide receivers. I get it. Lamar Jackson was still on the field. That's still an okay, at least a pretty decent Baltimore defense. And I'll tell you right now, years past, we lose that game. There is no luck for the Giants. We lose that game. But last year, we won those games. Jacksonville made the playoffs, and they're a young and up-and-coming team, just like the Giants, just like Detroit, just like Seattle. And we beat them. Like they were, I think at that time, they were only like 2-4 or something like that. But every single loss they had was like a really, really good game. And as you saw, they wound up winning more and more and more games. They went like 9-8. They made the playoffs, and they had that historic come from behind win against the Chargers. So, we beat some good teams last year, and those are teams that we always would have found a way to lose to. That's not luck. That's development.
No, not at all. I mean, that's definitely development. And
I
can tell you that Green Bay
wasn't that well said?
I mean, look at the Green Bay game. You brought that up from last year. That whole stadium was full of Packer fans. The whole stadium was full of Packer fans. No one expected the Giants to win that game. And Daniel Jones led them down the field, and they scored. And then you can talk about Baltimore. Everyone talks about how great Lamar Jackson is. He's a good quarterback. But critical errors by Lamar Jackson gave the Giants the game. And Daniel Jones showed up when he needed to.
And he didn't. And Daniel Jones didn't make those errors.
No. And that's what's going to separate Daniel Jones from other quarterbacks. I believe early on in his career, if you remember, I think there were a couple of games, his first and second seasons, where he made those mistakes. But what makes a quarterback really good and makes a 15-year-long quarterback in the league is guys who progress, guys who grow. And then you look at guys who don't grow and guys who are still making the same mistakes year 4, year 5 that they made the first year. And that's why I think Daniel Jones, I don't even think he's hit his ceiling yet. And we'll see how it goes. I think he's still growing. And and I think another thing with the New York media is that they have a long memory. They remember back to the 90s. They remember when Phil Simms retired. They remember like Kent Graham and Dave Brown. And of course, you go back and you think about those quarterbacks who came after pretty good quarterbacks, and you're like, oh, what's the odds of getting another great quarterback after, Eli retires, Daniel Jones comes in. Of course, a lot of people are going to think, oh, he's not going to be any good. We're going to have to wait until the next cycle. Maybe an Arch Manning who comes out of Texas in a couple of years. He's a guy who's going to somehow fall to the Giants. No, that doesn't always happen. Look at the Green Bay Packers. Brett Favre started there in the early 1990s. Aaron Rodgers comes in and is good for another 15 years. There are examples of teams who have continuity when it comes to one quarterback who's like Hall of Fame caliber, and then another one comes in who could possibly live up to those expectations. Now, do I know if that's where Daniel Jones is going right now? Don't know for sure, but so far, I feel like he's progressing on an upward path, and that's what you want out of a young quarterback.
Yeah, man. No, and what you said before, I agree with 100%, CGF. He has not touched his ceiling yet. I don't even think he's close. I think you're just starting to see the beginning of the ceiling. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but like, I think you're just out of the tunnel. We just exited the tunnel of darkness. Like what he did, getting like, my God, all the needles he needed to thread at last season in order to get to be where he is right now. Nobody thought I didn't even, as much as I love the guy and I believe in the guy, I'm like, Joe Shane, I think I get you, Joe Shane. I understand where you're coming from, but I think you're kind of making a mistake not picking up that fifth-year option because it's only $22 million. I do think he's, at least good enough for that. I think you kind of make a mistake. And here he is with and I'm not complaining because I'm glad that, he's a quarterback at least for the next few years. I fully believe in Daniel Jones. I really do. But I'm like, man, you just give this guy's like good coaching and you give him confidence on offense around him. It can't just be him. Like there's got to be confidence around him too. The offense needs to make sense. It needs to be competent. And that's what he had, even without like not a great offensive line, a great left tackle, but not a great offensive line. Receivers who even the second half of the season, Hodgins, Slayton, and Richie James, they were cooking, but these guys aren't going to a Pro Bowl anytime soon. At least not yet. Let's see what happens with Isaiah Hodgins, but I don't think he'll ever be that caliber. Even though I'm not knocking him, but this isn't Tyreek Hill. You know what I'm talking about? Or, it's not Stephon Diggs. And what he did with that last year, I don't think there are too many other quarterbacks that could have done what he did last year. When you include what he was able to do, the way he was able to extend drives with his legs too. Like, I don't think when you combine that, I don't think too many other quarterbacks. I don't think. Let's put it this way. Right now, I put him in the Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins tier, that second tier of quarterbacks, and I think he's moving his way up. And I think we already know what we have with those guys. I think he's in those tiers. I don't think Dak or Kirk, and it's no knock to them. I think they're good quarterbacks. I don't think they could have taken last year's Giants to 9-7-1 in the playoffs.
I have two things I look at when I do quarterback valuations. First thing I look at is a guy Jim Rat? Is this guy going to constantly strive to be better? Does he have a Michael Jordan?
A lot to me too.
Does he have a Michael Jordan mantra? Does he have a Kobe Bryant mantra? Is he going to do what it takes? Is he going to put all those other distractions on the side and do what he takes to be great? I see that in Jones. I saw that a long time ago in Jones. The second thing I look at and I see in Jones is, can he elevate a team? Can he elevate the other 52 players on the roster? You have a lot of quarterbacks who do well, but they do well in the system or they do well with a great team. And I know Philadelphia Eagles fans are not going to want to hear this, but Jalen Hurts is a perfect example of that. You have a great team. You have a guy who is good. I'm not saying Jalen Hurts isn't good, but you give Jalen Hurts the Giants roster they had last season. Let's see him replicate what Daniel Jones did. And in my mind, and that's my feeling, and that's my personal take. I know it may not be popular, but the way I look at it is, can your quarterback, whoever it is, can they elevate your team? And if he can, that's the sign of a great quarterback.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you 100%. And I like Jalen Hurts. I'm not knocking Jalen Hurts. I'm not knocking Dak, and I'm not knocking Kirk. I think they're all good quarterbacks. But I agree with you 100% on Jalen Hurts, where I'm not knocking the dude at all. But I've never seen, even in college, I've never seen Jalen Hurts really have to, when has Jalen Hurts ever elevated? When has he had to elevate players around him? He played on loaded teams at Alabama, and then what was it? Oklahoma he went to, I believe. I think it was Oklahoma, right? And it wasn't like, maybe Oklahoma wasn't Alabama, but Oklahoma's not a joke either. And they're usually known as being a good offensive team. And I actually, when Philadelphia drafted Jalen Hurts, I was impressed because I liked Jalen Hurts coming out of college. I did like him. I liked Tua more, but I liked Jalen Hurts. I was shocked because Carson Wentz looked like the dude in Philadelphia at that time, of course. But I'm like, man, second round. I'm like, that's interesting. It's interesting. I'm like, I like Jalen Hurts, and I thought the following year Philadelphia should give him a chance at full year as a starter and see how it goes before they draft another quarterback. And he played pretty well, but it wasn't like this was some lights out team. It wasn't like he was lights out quarterback, but you saw the promise there. But, lo and behold, what does he have? He's got this incredible offensive line. They traded for A.J. Brown last year. You got Devonta Smith as your number 2, a strong running game. And it's just probably just got stronger this year, with the 2 running backs they got in Swift and Penny. And he's got a great defense to harass the other offense and get you the ball back. He's got everything you would want, and this isn't taking anything away from him, but he's got everything you would want as a quarterback. So I've never seen Jalen Hurts have to. You can say the same thing about Dak Prescott. I don't feel Kirk Cousins, in my opinion, has never played on a team that's a Super Bowl contender, whether it's Minnesota or Washington. Has never been on a true Super Bowl contending team. I think Dak has for the past few years. And Dallas, I think, is going to be a really good team this. They are going to be a really good team this year. And I do think last year was an anomaly for Dak in terms of all those interceptions. But man, ever since he's been in the NFL, he's had true number one wide receivers, whether it was Dez Bryant, I think, then Amari Cooper. Now they've got CeeDee Lamb. He's usually had either an excellent offensive line or a perfectly serviceable offensive line. Has always had a good running game to help support him. And their defense has gotten better and better and better every single year to now the point where it's probably up there with the 49ers and the Eagles as like, a top 3 defense. So, and people have moved the needle or the goalposts on Daniel Jones. Like, man, like I don't see, like going back to the original point I made a few minutes ago, like I don't see too many of the quarterbacks doing what I'm not even sure if some of the elite dudes, honestly, like now I'm getting to that like area of like, do I really want to tread there? But I got to say, like, I have to honestly question, would Joe Burrow or even Justin Herbert, like, would they have done better? Would they have done better than Daniel Jones? Maybe they would have done the same with as passing quarterbacks that they couldn't do with their legs. Because Daniel makes up stuff with, he gets stuff done with his legs as well. It's an important component of his game. And maybe they don't really have that. So maybe they could go take the last year's Giants team to say 9-7-1. But would the team have gotten past Philadelphia last year in the playoffs? No. Would they have really been better than 9-7-1? I don't necessarily think so.
I love using the basketball analogy because if you go back, I always love using Michael Jordan because before the Bulls built that championship team, Michael Jordan could not beat the Detroit Pistons. He could not win those big games, but
that was a bad
great.
team. The Detroit Pistons of the late 80s.
Yes,
those were bad.
Yes, yes. And I love to use basketball analogies because I kind of equate the Philadelphia Eagles to our Detroit Pistons because they are a bad team, not bad, but I mean a bad
they're
team.
Badass.
And yes, exactly. And for me, no disrespect to Jalen Hurts. What he did last season was remarkable and it was great. Yeah. And he was able to basically get Philadelphia right on the doorstep of their second Super Bowl in 5 years. If it wasn't for that interference call, I think they would have won that game. But
I think they were the better team. They lost, but they were the better team actually.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 types of quarterbacks. There are quarterbacks who thrive in systems that work towards them, and they have good teams. And there's guys who elevate. And I also think there's a part of between the ears part because and we'll talk about the Jets a little bit later. But I lived in Wisconsin. I was around that for the last 2 years, and I don't know if Aaron Rodgers knows what he's going to be getting into in New York. You have to be a certain type of person to play in an environment like New York. And I think with Daniel Jones and what Eli Manning had before him, you need that persona. You need to have that where you could close your ears off and you could focus on what you need to do because it's going to be hard. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is prepared for if he has a bad game. If the Jets are 4-5 after 9 games and Zach Rosenblatt is asking him, why are you guys not meeting expectations? I don't know how he's going to handle it. It comes down to having that quarterback who can handle different situations. I know I'm going off on a little bit on a tangent, but right now I feel good about Daniel Jones as our quarterback. I feel like that we have the right guy. The question is all these moves we made this past offseason, are those moves going to equate to the next level?
Yeah, I'm just looking at I'll get this tweet that I've had up on the screen. I'll get it off in a little bit, real quick. Look at Kenny Golladay, who really was just like an extra blocker out on the field last year. To Darius Slayton, who was on the team last year, but point being that Kenny Golladay is not on the team anymore. You got Darius Slayton. who I'm very glad is back. I think he's going to have a great year this year. David Sills, not on the team. These are the starters week 1 of last year. When people say, "Oh, we got lucky," freaking lucky with what? Like we were like handed some sort of win or something. David Sills. We have Isaiah Hodgins, who balled out for the Giants second half of the year last year. So excited he's back with the team. Richie James, who thank God for Richie James last year. We would not have made the playoffs last year with Richie James. Him, Slayton, and Hodgins, when we had those three on the field at the same time, they were all healthy. Second half of the year, passing game was so much better. It was limited. There's only so much you can do with these guys. And we don't have Tyreek Hill or whoever over here. But we got Paris Campbell, who if he's healthy, should be, as well as Richie James played last year, Paris Campbell should be an upgrade. And he is faster. The team is looking to get speed, and that's what they've done. Daniel Bellinger, who had a great rookie year last year, and who I love, passing the baton to Darren Waller, who is obviously a different type of tight end and can really make this offense different to the point where I'm not even sure what we're going to see just yet, CGF, because, we heard great things in the preseason, saw some great things in camp, I should say. We only saw that starting unit on the team for one drive in all 3 games. So I'm excited. I'm not scared. I'm just kind of like, man, are they just keeping things under wrap? Like, I'm like, what are we going to friggin' see? We're going against Dallas, which is a really good defense, but man, what are we going to see? I know they just wanted to keep guys healthy, but I also wonder if there's something else there more like, sort of like, we're not like, we feel confident about what we got going on here, and we're not revealing anything until the rest of the season starts. And then you look real quickly, defensive side of the ball, Tay Crowder, no longer on the team. Bobby Okereke, who had like 147 tackles last year. Austin Calitro, oh my God, he wasn't even a starter by like week 3 last year. Micah McFadden, who had an admirable rookie year last year, was like a 5th-round pick, and he's had a really nice preseason. The linebacking core is very much upgraded right there. Aaron Robinson, who started, I still have high hopes for Aaron Robinson. I'd love to see him take the slot when he comes off the pup, if he's still on the team. But that guy was supposed to be the slot corner when he was drafted a few years ago. But instead of Aaron Robinson, we got Deonte Banks, our 1st-round pick, who got better and better and better this preseason. Darnay Holmes they got Darnay Holmes instead of Darnay Holmes, we got Trey Hawkins. It's really you really got what's his name? Adore's playing the corner now instead of Darnay, and then you've got Trey Hawkins instead of who was the other outside corner we had last year? What the hell was his name? He's not on the team.
Fabian Moreau.
Fabian Moreau. I wanted to say Foster Moreau, but that's a tight end. Fabian Moreau, exactly. So it's different, man. And Julian Love, who I love and I'm gonna miss, and I'm worried the Giants are gonna miss him too. Solid player who stays healthy. Jason Pinnock, who's a hell of an athlete. And as Bobby Skinner rightfully points out, and I had completely forgotten about, week 1 last year, we didn't even have Thibodeau and Ojulari. So you're basically just playing with Dexter Lawrence and Leo on the line, and that's pretty much it. Before I close this off, like anything you want to add, any observations of your own, any points?
What I'll say right now is that one of the keys that I look at going into this season is
Jalen Hyatt's not even up here.
That's or Isaiah Simmons as well. He's another guy that we just traded for. But I like the fact that we have year 2 of Mike Kafka. I think this offense is going to be built on mismatches. And you look at the Giants offense and you guys got Saquon Barkley. You could have Darren Waller on the field. You could have Jalen Hyatt. You can have Darius Slayton. And don't forget about Sterling Shepard. He's coming back too. And Wan'Dale Robinson. So this offense right now is loaded. And the biggest worry I have, or the biggest concern I have, is the offensive line. Right now, the front 5 are really good. I kind of feel confident enough. John Michael Schmitz has looked really good in camp. I think he's going to solidify that position, a place that hasn't really been solidified since probably 2011. David Boss, who was that free agent, and then before that, it was Sean O'Hara. So right now, looking at the offensive line, the front 5 are good. But then you look beyond that, you have some question marks. The Giants, what I've been begging them to do on Twitter, I'm not a GM, so I have no power to do this. Go get yourself some depth. I mean, you might have to give up like a third round or a fourth round pick, but I'm telling you, you always have injuries during the season to key players on the offensive line. That's going to be the key for the Giants this season. A healthy offensive line is going to allow this engine to run. If you start having injuries on the offensive line, you might have problems with the offense. So we'll see what happens. I feel really good about this team. Talking about the schedule, yes, on paper the schedule looks bad, but some of these teams, I did my preview, and please check out my channel to check out my preview episodes. Some of these teams aren't, in my mind, they're not that daunting to me. I look at Arizona, obviously. I look at the LA Rams. They have a lot of questions right now. I look at the Las Vegas Raiders. I look at the Commanders. Commanders have turned a new leaf, but they still, they're still the Commanders. So there are some winnable games on the schedule. And you also look at the Patriots. The Patriots are in flux. So right now, people are predicting, some people are predicting 5 to 7 wins. I think the Giants can have a good season, but it all comes down to health, and all comes down to Daniel Jones' maturation process.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like, in terms of, I look at the schedule too, and I'm like, yeah, it's a tough schedule. And like I said, like some seasons are going to you're going to have harder schedules than others, but I'm like, man, I think we match up fairly well with a lot of these teams. Like, I think Philadelphia, yeah, that's going to be, that's tough. That's tough. I still think Dallas is in a tier above us, but I think we can actually steal a win from them. Week 1 scares me because, man, it's just like, the young secondary, like, I want to see these guys get their playing legs under them before we're playing a team like that. And so that, that I don't like, but I wouldn't be shocked if we take I think we can take a game. I think we will take a game against Dallas this year. Philadelphia thinks a little too tough. San Francisco, I'm like, I think you got to be really loaded in order to deal with a team like San Francisco. And then, but I think, like, you look at the AFC East teams. Yeah, I think Miami's a better team on paper. That's Melvin. I have to deal with him in a little bit. I think they're a better team on paper. I think we can compete with them. The Jets, I think we can compete. I think the Jets, and you wanted to get to them, I think the Jets are a better team than us. I do. But I still think we can compete against the team fairly. And actually, Buffalo doesn't scare me. Buffalo, and the only thing that really scares me about New England is Bill Belichick. Such the defensive genius he is. But people look at, like, they point out, like, oh yeah, we went 1-4-1 in the division last year. There are the teams that made the playoffs last year out of crappy divisions. And I forgot who it was. I don't remember if it was maybe like Seattle or Minnesota. Like, there were teams that made Jacksonville, like, made the playoffs last year, who, like, went, like, 4-2 or 5-1 in their own division, and they got their butts kicked outside of their division. And like, people are talking up these teams, and I'm like, dude, we were in the hardest division in friggin' football last year. You can't even argue the point. Even Washington was 8-1. Like, so I know we only had 1 win, but again, we were far from a perfect team. You look at all the holes this team had last year. And, we had to wait for guys to get healthy. We had to wait for guys to come back too. And this team did get better and better as the season went along. So, man, I too look at it and I'm like, man, I look at the schedule this year. I'm like, I think we compete against all of these teams. I think there's some, like Philadelphia, which is I think it's just too deep and too strong for us. And I'll say San Francisco as well, just because their offense is, like, so different. It's so different. It's tough to contain unless you're super loaded on defense. But I looked at the schedule. I'm like, dude, I think we can compete against every single team. I really do. The difference in the talent and even the depth. You look at, like, the defensive line depth. Well, it's a huge difference. And I do believe in the young secondary. I'm concerned, and I think it's going to take a few games to really get things sorted out there. But I like Deonte Banks a lot. And man, Trey Hawkins he's looked great from day one of camp. What did you think about because we haven't talked since before the draft. Uh, draft nights. What was your reaction? How did you feel, man?
Well, I mean, watching the Giants' life retrospective from the draft really kind of keyed in on how fortunate the Giants were, because I know they
Those are
wanted
really
John Michael.
cool.
Yes, I
Those
love
videos are
those.
really
And
cool.
if the
I love them.
Giants social media team, if you're watching, please do more of those, because as a fan, as a content creator, it's something that's really insightful and interesting. I'll tell you, I think the Giants wanted both Jalen Hyatt and John Michael Schmitz. It worked out that they got both of them without
Yeah.
really having to give up too much. You look at the draft, the last two drafts, but this last draft in particular, you might have two boundary corners, starting corners who are better replacement level or better.
Can you
Obviously,
imagine it? Can you imagine if that works out? Can you
hey,
imagine if it works out?
the
I'm not saying it's
Giants, or
crazy.
no, the Giants have had bad drafts. If we go through the Reese, the Ghetto,
We
and
just
even the Corsi, the Giants have had bad luck. David Wilson, you know, they've had bad luck. You know, it's going to swing back the other way. That's how life is. So, I'm excited to see how their picks do. I don't expect Pro Bowl caliber play from Deontay Banks or Trey Hawkins out of the gate. If they get there, that would be great. You know, cornerbacks are always notoriously slow to develop. So
yeah,
that
they're
is a
not all
concern.
Sauce Gardner.
But I do want to say one thing, because I wanted to piggyback off of you were talking about the schedule. I'm not afraid of any of these teams. I know everyone is on San Francisco bandwagon right now, talking about, oh, they're the best team in the NFC, or they're going to go to the Super Bowl. No, they got Brock Purdy as quarterback. He, in my mind, is unproven. And if he doesn't work out, they have Sam Darnold behind him, right? So, like, for me, I look at San Francisco, it's who's driving the engine. Who's their quarterback who's driving the engine? It's right now it's Brock Purdy. Let's see how he does in a full schedule. Let's see Deebo Samuel stay healthy. Let's see these pieces. Look at the offensive line. They lost Mike
They're always injured.
McGlinchey. You know, they lost Mike McGlinchey. They have a new guy who came in who's got to replace him. They got, you know, obviously they have a lot of talent. They have Christian McCaffrey, who could be the offensive player of the year this year. He's always in the running for it. But I look at the schedule and I look at the teams the Giants play, and I know I was going to tell you, I'm jumping around a little bit. We're talking about the Jets. The Jets have major issues on their offensive line, and they also have, in my mind, a very bad coach. So, yeah, on paper, I did my preview. It's posted right. I think it's posted right now. I predicted the Jets to win 10 games, but honestly, I don't know how Aaron Rodgers is going to handle New York when the pressure's on him. And that offensive line, he's going to be running for his life, because you can't tell me that outside of probably Elijah Vera Tucker, none of those guys on the offensive line really inspire any confidence for me. So, so I look at the Giants. I think they have a chance to be really good, but it's on the field and it's the games you play.
Like, I'm not like, I don't expect them, you know, the Giants to compete. I don't expect the Giants to compete for a Super Bowl this year. I believe that next year can be that year. But I'm with you. Like, I think this is a good team. And like, I look at that schedule, man, I'm like, I think we can compete against anyone. And I think like the development of the players from last year was tremendous. The talent they've added in both the draft, which these are unproven players. I get it. The talent was really good. And the free agency signings, like the offseason that Joe Shane had, man, what a masterclass of that draft, man. Deontay Banks. I never thought Deontay Banks was going to be there. You know, when they picked that, they traded up one spot to make sure they got him and someone else didn't trade up, ahead of them to get him. But you could see in that Giants, what is it called? Giants Life? Is that what it's called? The videos?
Yeah, Giants Life.
Giants on Giants.com. I've listened to those like probably like 10 times each. Love them. Love them. And it's funny because, you know, a lot of people thought, and understandably so, that, okay, if we're going to trade up, we're going to trade up for a wide receiver. Joe Shane was talking about trading up, I think, with San Diego, who wound up taking, he started looking into trading up, I think, to pick 19 or pick 20. Maybe it was Minnesota. I remember he was like, oh, they're taking the wide receiver, which indicates to you that he's already thinking Deontay Banks. And they didn't think he'd necessarily be there, or, you know, that it wasn't likely. But they're like, oh, I remember he said, I think it was about Minnesota. They're going to take the wide. It's confirmed they're going to take the wide receiver. So they weren't even thinking wide receiver. They were thinking Deontay Banks. So this is who they wanted, and this is who they wound up with. And round two, him and Dable are talking, and they're like, okay, so we're going to wind up, we're like one pick is, we've got one pick ahead of us. We're either going to wind up with JMS or Hyatt. And then the Chicago Bears traded up ahead of the Giants, one pick. And that's where Shane was like, he's like, oh man. He goes, well, I guess it's going to be Hyatt, which means that, they really wanted the center, which is, in my opinion, was the right pick. Nothing against Hyatt, but we needed the center. And that the fact that he was there at pick 57 or whenever we took him was a godsend, unbelievable. And it's funny because then it turns out they took Tyreek Stevenson, I believe, the cornerback out of the U, and they're like, oh, the cornerback, okay, so we're gonna take JMS, but they were gonna take Hyatt in the second round, and they thought highly of him, where they were gonna take him in the second round. If it wasn't JMS, it was gonna be Hyatt. So they thought highly. Obviously, they traded up in the third round to get Hyatt, but the players they got with Banks, who probably should not have been there, pick 24, JMS, who I think should not have been there I'm not saying he was a first rounder, but the fact that he got to them at pick 57 was amazing. And then, to trade up a little bit, give away the fourth round pick, no big deal in my mind, to secure the wide receiver that you wanted in the second round. Holy cow. And the speed that Hyatt adds. That's why I'm so excited about this offense, CGF. I know it's going to be different. We know it's going to be a different offense. This is not last year's offense. This isn't a limited offense. This has got a lot of different fast personnel. Waller is a specimen of a human being. This dude is, I saw a picture today of him on Twitter of him standing next to Saquon Barkley. Man, I don't know how tall Saquon Barkley is. I forgot. I'm assuming he's at least like 5'10", I'd say at least. And it looked like he was standing like in a trench. And like,
he looked like Andre the Giant. He was huge. He looked like Andre the Giant.
Tall and just, massive. This dude is just, he's a fine specimen of a human being. And I'm just so excited. And just what they, Jalen Hyatt, I'm not sure of expectations for Jalen Hyatt for you. For this year, or however you want to take it, this year, career, what do you, me, myself, I'll lead off. I think that they're going to work him in, kind of like they did Wan'Dale last year, but they're not going to be afraid to use him either. Like, you are going to see him against Dallas. How often, I don't know, but you're going to see him. And I think the directive to Daniel Jones is going to be, if he's even with a cornerback, the term, if you're even, you're leaving. If he gets even with a cornerback, target the dude. We want to stretch this field. What are your thoughts on Jalen Hyatt?
I agree with you. I think they're going to ease him into the offense. I think he's going to have some really shining star plays, I guess you could call them, that we're going to remember next year when we're talking back about this season. I think it's a maturation process with him. And we're lucky that we have enough options at the wide receiver position right now where you can ease them in, and there isn't going to be this level of pressure out the gate. But from what I've seen from him so far, what I saw from him during the preseason, I think Giants fans can be really excited about him.
Man, what he did, his preseason performance too, in both games, it was Carolina in week 2. He scored a 33-yard touchdown where the secondary, maybe it was just a safety, which I feel bad for any safety that's going to try to cover the dude. But, it was like one hesitation and Hyatt was blowing by you. It was an easy 33-yard touchdown pass from Tyrod Taylor. So it's a second team. Against the Jets, we all saw he got past Sauce Gardner twice. Now, and to me, that really meant something. Other people are like, oh, Giants Twitter, they're going crazy because of who goes crazy off of 2 incompletions. We're going crazy because we saw what he did to the defensive rookie player of the year last year in Sauce Gardner, who's the real deal. And, to be able to really blow by this dude, if that were Daniel Jones as quarterback, again, it was Tyrod Taylor. If it were Daniel Jones, especially on the first pass, it would not have been an easy pass. It would have been kind of like, was you had the safety coming over as well. You had the sideline. It was very much, like Manningham to Manning to Manningham in Super Bowl 46. Kind of a tight window, but doable, and that's what good quarterbacks do. And I think Daniel Jones can do it. Once he got even with Sauce Gardner, the quarterback's got to pull the trigger and lead him vertically. Think about Jalen Hyatt compared to a lot of other speedsters that come out of the NFL. Those speedsters, especially guys who come out of like Baylor or say like Wake Forest, they don't tend to have good hands. They don't. Jalen Hyatt has good hands. He's an excellent deep ball tracker. Excellent. So if that were Daniel Jones quarterbacking at that time, that would have been a really long gain against Sauce Gardner, in my opinion. And then the second time they got past him, I don't know, the pass, but Sauce held him clearly held him, grabbed his jersey as he was getting by him, So, and that's something that, that should have been flagged. So, my God, I mean, it doesn't mean this guy's going to the Hall of Fame or anything, but Giants fans, my point is that you have every right to get excited about Jalen Hyatt. Every right to get excited about this dude. And we got him in the third round. I love it.
I mean, and another point is that when he was at Tennessee, he wasn't asked to do a whole route tree. I mean, based on what I've heard is that they wanted him to do certain things, but the Giants scouted him and they talked to him and they talked to different people and they said, you know what, this kid can do a lot more than what he's doing at Tennessee. And kudos to Shane. I mean, kudos to him seeing that and being able to get him, because it could be a real steal. We'll have to see what happens. I don't want to get too excited, but so far, so good.
Yeah. Listen, I just think I think this wide receivers with the right coaching staff, they're going to bring him along really, really well. I'm really, really excited about him. But it might have been what's his name, Baldinger, Brian Baldinger, who does a lot of famous for his breakdowns. Baldy, and he made. I think he was the one who made the point that it was like, he did against Jalen Hyatt against Sauce Gardner. He did the stutter step, and he said it was by the second step where he was in full acceleration again, like he was full speed again. That's how quick this guy was. Like he's so smooth, such a smooth runner. But man, I'm so that draft class was just absolutely phenomenal. You can't ask for more. All you can ask for now is just to coach these guys up. They put in the hard work. They get better over time, and hopefully quicker. They get really, really good quicker rather than later. And but man, what an off season for this team. But I'm with you, man. I think we're in agreement that people have moved the goalposts in this team. Last year was a fluke, and it sounds like you and I are both looking at the schedule. I'm like, me myself, I don't know exactly what the record's going to be like. I do think we're going to wind up being at least 9-8 and competing for playoff spots, but we're not going to be anybody's pushover. And last year was not a fluke, and we're not going to be anyone's pushover this year.
No, I agree. And I think the key to this season, as it was last year, unfortunately, they weren't able to do it last year, is to win those divisional games. For me, 3-3 or better, 4-2 would be great, because you take those interdivision games against the NFC East, you win at least 500% of them, maybe 4-2. The world is your oyster, I guess you could say.
Hey man, if we, like you said, if we can go 500 in our division and the AFC East, because that's tough as well. If we can get out of that 500, but listen, man, I think we're going to be a really, really competitive team. I think it's going to be a fun season, and I think this team is going to take it's going to take a huge step forward this year. I guess any thoughts about this? We'll end it with I guess the upcoming Dallas game. Like any thoughts, or you want to get a score prediction, or do you want to, if you want to leave the score prediction, for your episode that's coming out Wednesday, that's totally cool too.
No, that's fine. I'll give you a couple of quick thoughts. I haven't really done a deep dive yet into Dallas, but if it was me, the Giants need to establish themselves early. They need to put the fear of God in Dallas, because right now Dallas has beaten the Giants 9 out of 10 of the last times. Dallas is already joking. They're looking to week 2 against the Jets. So the Giants need to come out. They need to punch them proverbially in the mouth, and they need to establish themselves, because
Yeah.
Dallas needs to know that this is not the old Giants from 2020. This is the Giants of 2023. How they do that? They use mismatches. They use Saquon Barkley. They use Darren Waller. They throw Jalen Hyatt in there to use Darius Slayton. I would be very careful with their secondary. You want to scheme the right plays, but honestly, there's no reason the Giants can't win this game. I'm not going to give you a score prediction right now, but I do believe the Giants will win. It will either be a really close game and the Giants pull it out in the end, or the Giants are going to blow them out. And I know that's going out on a limb, but I just think the Giants right now are a good team. They're healthy, and the pressure's not squarely on them. It's on the other team in New York. So I think the Giants will be prepared. I think Brian Daboll gets the nod as a better coach than Mike McCarthy. I think coaching matters on both sides of the ball. And I think Dallas is going to take a step back. You know, Kellen Moore is gone. You know, they are going to take a step back. And I think trading for Trey Lance was not the best idea, because now you have a guy in the quarterback room who's going to make Dak start thinking about things. And when you play any sport, you don't want to think, you want to play and you want to execute. Yeah. So I have a different opinion of you than you on Dak Prescott. I think he's a good quarterback, but I also think that he's got some things going on. And I think it's going to get exacerbated. And if the Giants can get pressure on him, which I think they can, and he makes mistakes, I think it's going to go downhill really quickly.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I am excited about. We focused a lot on the offense, but I am really excited about the defense too, and in Wink Martindale's new toys. Really am. But it's funny because I did. We have here at T2T. We also have a Dallas Cowboys program as well. And my cousin John, who started, who goes by the name Coach Sheps, who started Toilets to Titles, or T2T. He's the host of that show, and he had me on yesterday morning. We're just, talking about the Cowboys and the upcoming game, of course, as given my Giants fan perspective. He too was worried about. That was one thing with Dak, is he also was worried about Dak's frame of mind. He feels that, like, he's a long-time Cowboys fan going back to the early 90s since he was like 4 years old. And he too was worried about, Dak's frame of mind, and seemingly like Dak seems to have a hard time moving on from like anything that, I guess, like any type of strife or anything that's difficult. Like he lets noise get to him. And so, like I said, my cousin, who thinks, who's a huge Cowboys fan and very knowledgeable, kind of made the same point that you were just making about with Dak as well. And I don't have those worries with Daniel Jones. I'll tell you that. Like, he's a guy that's like, he's almost like a serial killer. This guy's got ice in his veins, like Eli Manning. He really is. He really is. I don't know what the final score is going to be, but I think it's going to be a really close game. It's funny because originally I thought, like, early this year, I'm like, when the schedule first came out, I'm like, I think the Giants are going to take a game from Dallas. And I'm going to give them the home game because, it just seems to make more sense. But, obviously I think Dallas is a very good team. I do think I think this is going to be a close game. I do think the Giants are going to take a game from Dallas this year. It may actually wind up being the game away, which away games don't scare me. I think the Giants actually play fine on the road as opposed to home. I am worried about the young secondary. It does scare me, and I just don't know what to expect. And this team is like, Dallas isn't really a team that you can make any mistakes with. So I almost feel like I'm really looking forward to seeing them, in November or whatever it is, the second time that we're playing them. I'm kind of looking forward to that game. But man, I just think this is going to be a good game. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to give us a 27-24 win. That's what I'm going to give us. I am going to give this game this week. So yeah, I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with my original. I'll tell you, last year I had at the beginning of the season, I had us going 10-7. I had us going 10-7 at the beginning of last year. And I stayed, at the end of last year, at the end of last preseason, I had us going 10-7. And I was very close. I was very close. And I always, I never do my predictions on, based on homerism. I'm not a homer. If anything, I tend to be harder on my team than other teams. And I had us going 10-7 because I thought the team was more talented than people realized. And I felt like the coaching alone was going to make a huge difference. So I think the season's going to be great for the Giants. And you know what? I was kind of hedging on that Dallas, on my Dallas prediction, but you know what? I'm going to double down. I'm going to double down CGF. So I'm going to even just, I'll go 27-24, nail biter. And let's go with Daniel Jones to Darius Slayton game-winning touchdown as time is winding down.
That would be something else.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll have the receipt if we get it.
Yes.
I'll have the receipt on that prediction. All right, man. Hey, listen, thanks for coming. It's an hour and 5 minutes, man. I appreciate all the time you gave. I was under orders to, keep these episodes to like 30 to 40 minutes. I'm like, that's hard to do, man. That's hard to do.
No, that's totally cool.
Is. But hey, man, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. I definitely want to get you back here this season. I am going to try to have every single week. I'm going to try to have at least one guest here on the show with me. I used to do these mostly solo just because it was easier for me in terms of timing. Like, just not having to commit to someone else. I could just do it like in the middle of the night if I were going to record, or if I'm doing it live, like I could just like wait to the last second to do what I got to do. But planning ahead now, I want to get guests on. CGF, I'd definitely love to have you on again, man.
Awesome. I totally love to be on. Just let me know.
Absolutely. So let's go, Giants. I'm out here. Everyone, please know, CGF, do it. Can you do another plug for your shows?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at CGF_NFL or at CGF_sports. And you can find me on YouTube, CGF_sports on YouTube. Please look me up. I do everything. I do everything from game previews to player profiles to predictions. So love collaborating. Love talking about the Giants.
Yep. All right, guys. No, thanks again for being here, man. Really, really appreciate it. Everybody, let's go Giants. We are out of here, and catch you next week, everyone. Let's go Giants, baby.